Well, it's great to have you all joining us. I think we will get started. Thumbs up, Sean?
Thumbs up.
Okay, all right. Well, welcome you guys. I'm Maggie Kelly. Sean Hogan is also going to be presenting. We're very excited to have you join us. And this is another in our series of workshops that we've been developing this summer and fall all around mapping technology. And today we're going to do a dive into using ArcGIS Online, which is a terrific cloud-based software that's out of the Esri platform and is really coming on strong to be a great way to do GIS and data work. So typically what we do is I give a kind of an overview and situate us in terms of the technology, and then we hand it over to Sean and he does a deep dive into the workshop. And we're going to do that again today. And of course, you all know, or maybe you don't, these workshops are provided through the University of California Agricultural and Natural Resources. All of us here giving the workshop are part of a statewide program called Informatics and GIS. And UCANR is a network of people, academics and staff across the state who are dedicated to bringing science solutions to communities in a range of ways. And some of those ways include statewide programs like CalFresh or UCIPM, Integrated Pest Management, or 4-H. Some of you may have heard of these or been involved in them. Our program, Informatics and GIS, is one of those statewide programs. And we are very much dedicated to helping you come up to speed in this important mapping technology that's really becoming a critical part of all of our daily work. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for being part of UCANR. We hope to connect with you going forward as well. This is who we are. We are a statewide program. I'm the director, Maggie Kelly. I'm a cooperative extension specialist and professor based out of Berkeley. And we have with us this wonderful team to assist you in this. Sean Hogan's going to be giving the bulk of the workshop today. He's a remote sensing expert and a ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Pro expert as well. But we're also ably assisted by Robert Johnson, Andy Lyons, Shane Fire, and Ben Satzman. They're behind the scenes. If you need anything technical help, put it in the chat, reach out. We're here to make sure that this workshop is useful for you. This is who you are. And alas, this is not all you are, because as many of you know, our ANR website went down, has been kind of spotty for the last couple of weeks. So I wasn't able to get all of your addresses, but you're predominantly from California. We have a couple of folks from outside of California joining us. But if you care to, in the chat, could you tell us your name, what you hope to learn from this workshop, and your experience, not with Pro, I forgot to change this, your experience with ArcGIS Online from like 1 to 5. It'll just help us and all of you get a sense of who we are. So anybody wants to start, I would love to see that. I got the chat window open. So your name, what you hope to get out of this workshop, your experience with ArcGIS Online, take it away. Thanks, you guys. Design sitemaps, absolutely. Hello, Chris. You're back for more, I see. Awesome. Hi, Sasha. Hi, Lauren. Yeah, story mapping, great. Angela, terrific. Hey, Rob, nice to see you. Paulina, that's great. Julio, Eve, Emily. Somewhere between 1 and 5. I hear you, Diane. Some days I'm a 1 and some days I'm a 5. This is great. Love it. I love this. So a lot of you are starting in your GIS world, and that's absolutely fine. We're really designing these workshops to get you up to speed and get you going, utilizing this technology in your everyday work. in a comfortable and impactful way. Great, love all that. Thank you so much. So what we're going to do today is a little bit of introductions. We've done them. I'm going to talk a little bit about what this whole thing is, doing GIS on the web. We're going to talk about how Esri does it. That's the major software platform that we're working on. Why ArcGIS Online or AGOL or AGOL, however you want to call it. And then some core concepts. Because even though some of you are beginners to this GIS world, you might have encountered GIS, before. And so when we do everything in the cloud, there's a few extra things we need to think about. And then design considerations, because at the end of the day, we all want to make something gorgeous and useful. So we can think about this whole landscape of mapping as making this big transition. We're in this transition phase, and traditionally mapping has this long history, of cartographic techniques on paper, each work kind of curated, by hand in history and then on computer. But we're pushing this shift now to web mapping and doing our GIS on the web. And we think of web GIS as a powerful interactive tool for communicating, allowing dynamic access to data, created for users who are not experts, and really for public mass participation. And so we're in the middle of this important transition, and that's what we're going to do today. So we're going to focus on not the traditional mapping, but web mapping, web GIS. And that's essentially a GIS, a geographic information system on the internet. These are, like I said before, powerful tools for communicating and collecting data. You can view data, you can search data, you can query data. Sometimes you can analyze data. All these apps that we're going to talk about are really designed so that you don't have to be an expert in GIS to interact with spatial data, which is really terrific. WebGIS can be open source and free, and it can also be proprietary. So there's a lot of open source or freely available tools out there: Google Maps API, CartoDB, Mapbox, OpenLayers. Some of you have heard of some of these, I'm sure. And then there are proprietary sources. These are sources where you have to pay for a license or pay for some kind of software subscription. Esri's ArcGIS Online, which we'll be using, is one of those. We have UCANR license for ArcGIS Online that we manage at the IGIS program and can help you get set up. But the whole array, this open source and proprietary landscape, is really shifting quite quickly. But we're going to be very situated in the Esri world today. So in the Esri world, when we're talking about WebGIS, we're talking about web maps and web apps. And web maps are essentially, I've created online through this ArcGIS Online, a web map that allows users to turn layers on and off, to do some limited analysis, to change symbology and interact with the data. And then web apps are customized versions of those web maps where you present, through the use of these widgets, what you want your user to do. So a few examples here from the left. We've got a web map where we map ANR employees. We can customize the symbology of this. We do a lot of analysis around this. And then as we sort of move to the right, there's a web app. Is an example there is an iPhone. That's my iPhone with a field maps app on it where I kind of track where I walk everywhere during pandemic shutdown. Or another web app is ANR Virtual Tour. That's a story map built. The one at the top is a fire perimeters web app that Sean built of the Calder fire, kind of a real up-to-date look at that fire perimeter. And the one on the bottom is one we all turned to so much last year. This was a COVID-19 dashboard from Johns Hopkins. So all of these are created in the Esri world through web maps and web apps. So web maps are basic online maps with some limited layout options, some analysis capabilities. They really are the building block that you use to create your web apps. And your web apps are graphically appealing, but lots of different layout options, ways to plug and play with different Esri tools like story maps or dashboards or other things. And these often resemble a standalone web page. There's something you can send to your collaborator and go, here's your data. Play around with it, zoom in, zoom out, turn stuff on and off. But you've controlled all of that. You've made how the user can interact with that web app possible. So why do maybe you want to use ArcGIS Online? You might want to use it online to create these web maps and web apps. You want to link to loads of these application packages that Esri provides, like field maps or dashboards or story maps. You might want to perform some simple analysis, but more advanced stuff is definitely on the way with ArcGIS Online. They're really thinking about you being able to do a full suite, a full complement of GIS analysis online. And you can access loads of data. Really, really a big selling point. It's fast, it's intuitive, it's browser-based, it's a lot of fun. Another reason, quite simply, is because you can integrate. You can integrate across the data, design, and develop process. There's a lot of Esri data that's at your fingertips from places like Living Atlas or your data collection apps or your very own data. We're going to talk to you about this in the workshop. You can do really great design, customize the symbology, the look and feel when you create your web maps, and then you can develop these apps by linking to lots of native apps from Esri, like, for example, story maps. But it doesn't do everything. So really, really focused cartography and design are better in desktop software, in my opinion, like ArcGIS Pro. There's not a lot of control on projection, so spatial projections. And if you haven't experienced this, don't worry. It means that you don't have a lot of control about the spatial structure under your data. That's better done on a desktop application like Pro. And up till now, there hasn't really been a way to do advanced analysis on ArcGIS Online, although, like I said, that's coming. So image processing, making classification of a remotely sensed image, for example, that's coming to ArcGIS Online. So in the Esri world, we spend a lot of time going back and forth between what's on your desktop, what's local, that's ArcGIS Pro, and what's in the cloud, that's ArcGIS Online. And we go back and forth between them. And there's lots of advantages for each. But honestly, you do end up going back and forth, between them a lot. But let's review the strengths. The strengths of being in the cloud: create web maps, create web apps, links to loads of these things like story maps, very simple, a simple analysis, very fast, very intuitive, browser-based. For us GIS experts, though, we often stay down locally with using something called ArcGIS Pro. We do our cartography there, our projection control, all that advanced analysis, image processing, spatial modeling, etc. But the benefit of this linked relationship is you can move back and forth, and in both of these, you can access loads of data, loads of spatial data. We're very, very data-rich area. So let's talk quickly about this, because today in the workshop, we are spending time out here on the right, ArcGIS Online, but we want to go through a few basics before we do. So for those of you who have spent time locally with a desktop software like ArcGIS Pro, you might be used to these local file formats, things like shape files or grids. These are typically local, they're stored on your computer. You work with them on your computer. Up until 5 years ago, you never pushed them up to the cloud. But when we talk about data in the cloud, GIS data in the cloud, we forget all that terminology. And what we really talk about are layers and services. And layers are the spatial data and any symbology that you've assigned to that data. And you're going to do this in the workshop. And services are just the instructions on who can do what with your data in a shorthand. So layers in the cloud are vector data is called a feature layer. You can have an image layer or an elevation layer. You can have a scene layer, which is optimized for 3D. You can have a tile layer, that's a base map. But the gist is, when you're in the cloud, we're talking about layers and services. And services are just the instructions that say, when I go to your web app, how can I use that data? Can I display it? Can I download it? Can I analyze it? Or can I just look at it? And all of this is going to be done behind the scenes. So I don't want you to worry, like, how am I going to define all this stuff? It's all done behind the scenes, but the terminology is important. We're going to talk about layers and services. That's the gist. And one of the things that ArcGIS Online does really well is it gets you started on this with their concept of sharing. So when you're in the cloud, you've got your data, you've either found it from somewhere or you've uploaded it from Pro. You have to think about, who do I want to see this? Who do I want to access this data? And there are various levels that Esri makes possible. You can share it with just you. It's something you're working on. You can share it in your group. We do this a lot in IGIS. We've got our IGIS data. You can share it with your organization. That's all of ANR in our case. Or you can make it public. And Esri does a great job of going through this. And we'll touch on this a little bit later. Another thing I want to say before we start is, where does data come from when we're doing this? And typically, as you'll see in the workshop, it can come from a range of sources, but typically it's one of these three things. It's either downloaded directly from somebody's repo that they've created, where they are like, click here for this shapefile, and you get a shapefile that's zipped. More commonly, though, it's this middle one where you're interacting with somebody's data archive, that they've made the data available as these web-enabled layers and services. WFS, WMS, WCS, that's just the type of layer and service that they're providing to you. This is going to be more and more typical, and we'll do this in workshop. Another way, a third way that's also becoming more common is interacting with somebody's API or application programming interface. That means they've created a data repository that will allow you to directly link with it through some lines of code and pull that data down. So today we're going to spend most time focused on that middle way, but there's lots of ways to get data into your projects. All right, this is what you're going to be doing. This looks a little busy. I'm going to walk you through it. You're going to start thinking about the data. Where do I get it? Do I get it locally from my Pro? Do I get it from Living Atlas, which is the Esri archive? Do I get it from ArcGIS Online, which is their other archive? Where do I get it? I get it from somewhere. I pull it into my ArcGIS Online project, and I create layers. For example, a web feature layer, which is essentially this, this web-enabled data format. From that, I can create a web map. And that web map, Esri does not make this easy. You can do it one of two ways. You can create your web map in a web map viewer, or you can create your web map in a web map viewer classic. They're both lovely. but just, you know, they do change their software. So there's two ways to create a web map. Each of them have their advantages. From those web maps, you're going to create web apps. And you can do this through Experience Builder or story maps or dashboards. And then those web apps are going out to the world to make it a better place. So that's going to be sort of the workflow that we're working with. And when you do this, I want you to be cognizant. You want to think about, just like we have design principles for making maps, we have design principles for making these web maps and web apps. Who are your users? Who's your audience? Who's your stakeholders? What's the objective? What needs to be symbolized? How is it going to be symbolized? What to include and what to leave out? And are there any ethical considerations? Am I providing data that I shouldn't be? Am I not paying attention to those sharing or those service restrictions on my data? You also might want to think about logistical considerations. Do you want this thing to be dynamic or do you want it to be static? What kind of data do you need? Who's going to host it in the long term? Is this web map going to be part of an existing website? Like, are you going to embed this into your homepage? Do you need to support multiple platforms? Do you want it to look gorgeous on a smartphone as well as a tablet, as well as a screen? Esri does a great job of making that easy. Do you need to support offline access? Do you need to collect field data during this? How much programming is going to be required? Can I do this, you know, simply by not writing a line of code? And you absolutely can with this workflow we're going to show you. And then how much money am I willing to spend? You know, how is this, how is it all going to work? So with that, that was a quick overview of where we are in this web GIS world. It's a tremendously exciting one. And I'm really excited to kick this off to Sean. If you're into this and you want to learn more, we have a range of other workshops coming up. They're all free. They're all on Friday afternoons, just like now. We also had a morning one this morning. It's a 2-workshop day where we looked at climate CalAdapt data. But we've got an intro to ArcGIS Online, that's today. Intro to ArcGIS Story Maps, that's next week. We've got some drone flight stuff coming up. Introduction to ArcGIS Pro, introduction to ArcGIS Field Maps. And I'm super excited about this. Later in the fall, we've got a brand new workshop, Intro to Jupyter Notebooks. That's where you can get started doing coding. It's going to be terrifically fun. And then an introduction to cartography and design in Pro. So, you know, pay attention the website's now back up, so you can find all of this information on our website. And we also do have office hours and a resources page for you in your continuing work to make GIS part of your daily program. Okay, on to the workshop. So, Sean, I will turn it over to you and you can take it away.
Very good. That's a perfect intro to what we're going to be covering today. Before I get started, I might note that this is possibly difficult for some people, because when you're trying to go through an exercise where you have exercise material that hopefully you just received about an hour ago or so, and you're trying to refer to the Zoom and trying to use ArcGIS Online, it becomes a little bit overwhelming. Feel free to follow along at whatever pace or level that you'd like. I will try to keep it slow. If you have any questions, please throw them in the chat. We have pretty much our whole team here, so one of our team members might be able to answer those questions in the chat. If not, they can bring the question to my attention during a good point. We'll also note that a lot of this exercise was partially developed by Shane Fire, who is with us. He is our licensed manager and all-around GIS guru. So if you have questions, he might be a person to ask in a lot of cases, and he might be chiming in too as we go through the workshop exercise. Without further ado, let me get everything up and share my screen. Speaking of having a lot of tabs open, okay, live transcription. Okay, I'm enabling live transcription, and for everyone's information, this is being recorded. I will share that recording with you all next week. It takes a couple days for it to get processed. All right, so I said, speaking of having a lot of tabs open, I won't be able to see the chat in a lot of cases just because I'll have too many things on top of other things here. What this exercise will include, to start off, will be further presentation. I call it info only. You don't have to do anything for about the next half hour because I'm just going to go through all the bells and whistles, levers and buttons in ArcGIS Online just to give you an orientation to the software application. With that said, we will be coming back to a lot of these points to reinforce them as we go on. The exercise will have a lot of what I'm covering, sometimes more, sometimes a little bit less, but that, again, should be in your email right now. And if you could bring that up, that would be great. If you have any questions right now as far as getting your online application ready, your ArcGIS Online, this would be a good time to put it in the chat, and Shane can help you with that, or Robert Johnson, also as administrator on our account. Some of the things that I'll be presenting will appear a little bit different than what you have. The reason for that is because we have an organizational account, and I'm an administrator on this. The accounts you are using will be as a user or possibly using a developer account or a trial account, which have different nuances, but hopefully shouldn't interrupt or interfere with any of the things we're doing in the exercise. And if they do, I have workarounds for that to help you out. All right, so to start with, I need to get my Zoom bar out of the way. When you first open up ArcGIS Online, you'll see, there's something in front of my bar. There we go. When you first open up ArcGIS Online, you'll see this ribbon across the top. Like a lot of ArcGIS applications now, these are often conditional. When you first open up, you might see your home, which will have a splash page, maybe not similar to this if you're not within the UCANR organization, but if you are, this might be what you're looking at. Otherwise, it'll pop up to your organization tab in a lot of cases. Next is gallery. Gallery for an organization account will show all of the content that has been shared within your organization. This has been growing for years, and so I don't even know how many, probably 1,000 layers and maps and scenes and you name it are in here, but there's a large amount of content that are available through UCANR, but it's not, and this is just UCANR. We'll be going to other repositories that are quite robust now. In the old days, one of the biggest problems that I always used to face, I think it was kind of universal, was trying to find data. It was just really difficult. Now, there is more data at your fingertips than you can begin to imagine. It's amazing, and it's growing too, along with the abilities of the applications to utilize that data. So within the gallery, you'll see maps. You can see web maps and map files, layers, apps. Again, I'll try to revisit some of the terminology. Maggie did an excellent job of separating out or explaining how we'll be using web maps for developing our material, and then web apps that sometimes called web mapping applications that can easily be confused with web maps to display our content with more informatics included with it, like north arrows and call outs and text and that sort of thing. Next will be map. We're going to come back to this. This is the tab that you work in more often than any other tab. You might notice across the top that we lost that horizontal contextual ribbon. Instead, now it's on a drop down. We don't need to worry about that right now. And this is the environment where you're going to be loading and manipulating, analyzing all of your data for your mapping projects. We're not going to be able to use a lot of the functions here until we actually load data in. But before I do that, and we're going to come back to this at the end of this half hour, is I'm going to give you a little time to get used to just some of the basic steps. Under the About tab, there's a couple steps that you can use here to just get a basic orientation. And that's a good way to just kind of start to get the feel of this app. One thing I'll note right now is it's really important that you have a roller ball or a mouse, because without that, it is really difficult to work within this app, or ArcGIS Online, ArcGIS Pro as well. You need to have, you can't use like your pad and your track button as well. We don't have any content loaded in yet, but once we do, we'll have some options that we can look at, and I'm going to do that right now. And we're going to revisit this. This is info only. We'll come back to this in the exercise. This is where I can add data either from an online source like Living Atlas, or for web accessible layers from your computer that you've already downloaded, as well as adding map notes, which will be in one of the exercise steps. For now, I'm just going to search for layers not in my content, but rather in ArcGIS Online. I was going to do something simple like counties. And press enter. And then when I click on the first one, USA Counties, it pops up and it gives me the option to add this map down below. Also note that there's a description. This description is important in a lot of cases because you want to not only know what you're putting into your map, but also if you're going to publish any of your material, you need to know who to cite. I'm just going to add this to the map. Anytime you add material to your map, any form of content, you will have different options that pop up with it. In this case, this is a vector layer, so we have a variety of options. Some of the layers that we'll add later will have more options. Underneath this, we'll have a legend option. We'll have a tabular option that'll show attributes of this, including the names of all these counties across the country. X out of that, zoom's in the way. There we go. We'll be able to adjust the style. We'll come back to that. Filter your data. This is important in a lot of cases because you don't want to have, say, all of the counties in the United States. You might only want the counties in California, so you can use that filter option. And then perform analysis, which is pretty big, very important. And finally, one of the most used is these three little dots. I refer to them as the horizontal dots in the exercise. If you click on that, you're going to have a variety of more options, such as zoom to. This is important when you load a lot of data into your map. It's really easy to lose track of your data. And so if you click zoom to, it'll bring you to the scale that data is presented at. Transparency. You can set transparency level so you can see through it to a certain degree, or completely make it opaque or entirely transparent. Set visibility range. I'll come back to this, but if you load in data and you can't see it, you need to adjust the visibility range most of the time, because if I scoot this visibility range down too far, we'll lose that on the map. This happens almost every single time I load up data. You can hide legends. You can copy your data, which is sometimes handy if you're you're doing experimentation and you don't want to mess up your symbology. You want to have a backup. And then there's configure pop-ups and a bunch of other options here that we'll come back to during the exercise. And finally, there's legend. Redundantly, not only will I have the analyze or perform analysis option here, I can also access that through the analysis button at the top. This will bring up a variety of functions that are more or less basic. They rely on the ArcGIS Online and sometimes Living Atlas data, for background data to do enrichment, for example, to add different attributes to your data, or you can summarize data and do other functions. As Maggie noted, there is a lot of, most of the time, this type of analysis is done in a desktop application, but increasingly there are more analysis options in the online environment. Moving on, there'll be base map. You can change your base map to, I think last time I checked, there was about 21 or so different options for base map. That is the background. One of my favorites is hybrid imagery. And now you can see that it's being covered up with this county's map. So I can uncheck that to be able to see behind it, or change the symbology to be able to see through it. Other options will be your save options. So just save and save as. When you do something like this, you're going to need to put in tags. This is important, as we'll see in a minute when we look at the contents portion of your ArcGIS Online, in that you need to have tags to be able to both discover your own data or make it easily discoverable by other people, either all through ArcGIS Online or within your organization, or just within smaller groups. Using intuitive titles and tags will help you out a lot in the long run. I'm going to cancel this right now because we don't need this. Sharing your map, oh, you'd have to save it first. I'm not going to save it, but this is where you can share your map and create a URL to be able to send to your cousin, and they can look at that map as long as it's shared to everyone. You can print your map, find directions, measure, and bookmarks that are also other things that we won't need to worry about right now. Moving on. Again, we'll come back to this because this is where we'll work most of the time. I'm going to go to scene. So when you scene is a 3D representation of spatial data, not necessarily your spatial data, but spatial data in general. And here are some basic options. You can create your own scene, but for now, I'm just going to use a development scene. This is just openly shared through ArcGIS Online. We also have one in there for our HREC. That's our Hopland Research and Extension Center that UCANR maintains, where Shane Fire is located out in Mendocino County. Why I bring this up partly is not only is it a great visual representation of data in a lot of cases, but this is an environment where you can have a add-on that will allow you to import the CAD data. That doesn't come up all that often, but it is a neat function that is within this kind of this frame. But also you can save this and include it in something like a story map as well. Is a portion of a story map, which will allow you to move between, say, different perspectives of the scene, and just it's fairly seamlessly scroll between those. And I'll just kind of give you I'll touch on that a little bit later with an example, even though we're not going to be building story maps. As a shout out to story map workshop, we're going to be doing that next Friday. If you're interested, there's still space in that workshop. Next, I'm going to go to Notebook, and I'm going to leave this without saving it. I'm going to, no notebooks yet. Uh-oh. I'm going to create a new notebook, standard notebook for now. So Maggie mentioned the ability to do greater processing online all the time. And one of the ways that this has been enabled now is with this really exciting functionality of ArcGIS Online of including notebooks built on top of Jupyter notebooks that can utilize Python code for a number of kinds of analysis. Granted, you're going to be limited by the speed of the online processing of ArcGIS Online in doing that analysis, but it allows you to do analysis that you never were able to do before with just a in any kind of online environment. Stuff that you was previously reserved just to desktop applications. What we use this for is generating file structures. We can do automate types processes for not just our online data that we bring in, we upload, but also data that is imported via or from like mobile data collection apps. And I'll touch on a couple of those apps like field maps in a moment. We're not going to deal with this right now, but we do have a workshop on this coming up in November if you're interested. And from there, this opens up in a different tab. So I'm going to go back to my horizontal ribbon. I'm going to go to groups. I mentioned field apps or field maps. Sometimes it's really, well, there's a lot of use cases or reasons for using a group or creating a group and then only sharing data within that group. One of those reasons is if you have a field map, a field data collection app, you might want to only share that data with people that are qualified to collect the kind of data that you want. So say you have a team that knows the varieties of weeds in an area, you'd only share with them, so only they would collect the data that you want for a project. Alternatively, you can create groups that are larger that might include your whole entire organization or again subsets of your organization. And once you have access to that group, the data that is shared through that will show up in the next step of this is your content. So across the top, now I went to the content. This is, other than map, the map tab, this is the next most common place that you'll probably spend your time in ArcGIS Online. In your content, you'll see a whole, well, after you've been using it for a while and you have your own account, you'll see a variety of layers. In this case, you see a web map in the center. I'm starting in the center of the screen. Feature layers that are hosted. Hosted denotes that that data is hosted in such a way that you can do greater levels of analysis. If it isn't hosted, in some cases it's restricted at one level or another from someone else's server, then it won't be fully functional for some types of analysis and visualization. There's a step in the exercise that will show you how to, actually there's two different ways that you could take an online data set that isn't hosted and turn it into one of your own hosted data sets. There's feature layers, web maps, web mapping applications. If I go further on, you might see story maps. There's a whole variety of different types of data. What I tend to do is I organize this into folders. I have all of my data. I have CalFresh workshop data, CalNaturalist, Humboldt. I have a variety of these training data sets, and if I click on any one of them, only the data associated with that folder will appear. For right now, I'm just going to be using all of my data. Sometimes you'll find data that's really important to you. For example, I might want to return to this workshop. This is a sample or example web map that I made for this workshop. I also shared it openly. And the reason for that is if anyone in here has trouble and they lose their web map, there's a step in the exercise that you can return to this example map that I already created for you reference. But if I wanted to be able to return to this easily, I can favorite it. And then if I click on my favorites at the top, that will show up. And I won't have to go searching through like a library of different types of data. You can also see the data that's associated with different groups and data associated with the organization that is almost identical to the gallery above. Living Atlas, that's another location that you can see data. There's a number of ways to access the Living Atlas, and we'll be using this during the exercise. One is to just explore it here in your content. Another one is through adding just directly from Living Atlas. And next is through this apps shortcut at the top right-hand side of the screen. If I go in here and click on Living Atlas, it'll give me a different interface to browse through the Living Atlas data, which I like more and more because it's easier to find data this way and then know what the keywords to search for when adding it to my map later on. I'll return to that app option in a second.
Sean, while you take a breath,
Yes.
may I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
So some folks don't have permissions to open the notebooks portion, which you covered a little bit before, but I don't think we're using notebooks in workshops, so it's fine, right?
No, we won't be using that. I'm not surprised if you don't have an enterprise license that, for example, one that like we have for UCANR, that might be a problem for you if you need to use notebooks. It's also, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to add in one additional thing is there's a special role that I need to assign to the user that allows them to use notebooks. So if anyone wants to do that, my email is in the chat window and I can get back to you.
Excellent. Notebook is being it's the newest functionality here. Even for me, sometimes it'll show up on my header and sometimes it won't. I know that I have a training account that it intermittently shows up and then doesn't show up. But fortunately, again, we're not using that today. Next, I'm going to go to my organization tab. This is going to be different for you. This isn't what an administrator would see if they came into ArcGIS Online. And what it shows me is the credits for an organization. I just want to take this, one of the main things that I want to take this time for is to explain credits. When you have an ArcGIS Online account, a lot of the analysis functions require credits. An example would be is if you have a bunch of addresses and you want to geocode them, create points on your map using, like say, a table of addresses. Each address is going to use a point. As you can see on the screen, this is for all of ANR, and we have a ton of credits. The enterprise and the trial accounts, I believe they come with roughly around 100 credits per month. It's not that bad. It'll do enough basic functions. If we usually cap our credits for ANR, because one time we had someone try to geocode like 9 million addresses, there's if you run out of these credits, it costs more to re-up your account. And I'll show you how to see how many credits and then an analysis we'll use later on. Good. So great, we're coming roughly to the end of the hour, just right spot on time with what I was hoping for. So this is what before we take a quick break, this is what I'd like you to do. This is where we'll start with with your hands-on portion of the workshop. Again, when we go through the exercise, you'll see some, here, I gotta scroll up further. Sometimes you'll see exercise called out and sometimes it'll be info only. I've covered all of this. Oh, I see one thing I kind of failed to cover, which is fine. I'll return to that in a second. You'll see exercise. These are steps to be followed. And then sometimes you'll see info only. That's just, yeah, I put that in there so you don't think you have to do any steps right there. And I skimming through this, I see the one thing I forgot I said I'd return to. That is the associate apps with ArcGIS Online. And I think this is fairly important in that ArcGIS Online is now kind of like a hub for your data. And it's intertied between your ArcGIS Pro, which can sync with your ArcGIS Online. It can sync with your story maps, with your map viewer, which is a different way of creating web maps. Maggie mentioned field maps now is almost an all-in-one application for different types of data, field data collection. Your experience builder all tied to ArcGIS Online, and then I showed you living atlas. And just one little neat thing is and it seems kind of weird or redundant to have an ArcGIS Online button in here. If I click that, it'll open a new ArcGIS online session using the same, all with the same login. The value of this is sometimes you want to be looking at your content, but also be able to look at your map at the same time. So you can have both of them available to you. And so you can toggle back and forth to see what your content looks like. So just know that there's that shortcut up at the top is very handy for accessing these other apps that will be revisited in future workshops. So anyways, back to the actual hands-on portion of the exercise, which starts down about page 11 of the exercise directions. As we go into the break, and you can take as much time as you'd like with this, it will take a 10-minute break, but for say the first 4 or 5 minutes of it, what I'd like you to do is to open up ArcGIS Online. Hopefully you all have an account. If you don't, throw it in the chat. Go into your map on the top. I have a completely blank map right now. So what I'll see is this about portion. Practice going through these steps here where you can search for an address, choose a base map, add some pop-up display information on here. This is a question for previous workshop. If I add map notes, this is not a true layer. This is just a visual display. So I'm just going to say some kind of map notes template, map notes, create, and then I can put stick pins on my map with descriptions that will reside there, but are not actually, they're just visual. They don't actually have any attribute saved. It doesn't save any features to my content. But go through, if you'd like to go through these steps, and once you're done, instead of saving your map, go up to new map and create new map. One thing that's important is if you ever navigate out of your map and you haven't saved it, then it might be gone when you come back to it. So it's important that you save your map as you go if you're going to save it. This is just a practice exercise, so we won't worry about it, but just at the very beginning. But as we go through the workshop exercise further, we'll prompt you to save your map every so often. All right, so let's take a 10-minute break. We'll come back at about 2:06. If you'd like to open up your ArcGIS Online, go to your map, try to go through these first initial steps, and that'll get you ready for what we're doing next. All right, any questions? Nothing. I'll be hanging around if you do, and just throw them in the chat, and we'll keep an eye on that. Oh no, it looks like I have a glitch on my Zoom, so I'm going to have to step out and step back in. And I'm going to we already have. I can't even get out of my my Zoom. All my buttons are gone.
Yeah, you're popping in and out vocally too.
Oh, interesting. I'm going to close that. I'll be right back.
Okay. Can you make me the host?
I'm trying. It seems to be frozen up. I can't even X out of anything. I'm just stuck on the screen share without access to my bars.
Well,
Weird. But Shane and Robert and Andy are all hosts too.
okay.
So that's hopefully when I go
I
away.
just, if you leave, I don't want this whole lovely thing to close.
Yes. I don't think it will.
Yeah, as long as you just leave and don't end the meeting, it should be fine.
I can't. I'm going to Control Alt Delete to get. My task manager. Hopefully, I can even unstop it.
Perils of Zoom.
Yeah, I've never had this happen before. There we go. Strange. Right, I'll be right back. Yep. Another couple minutes and we'll get going. See any questions jumping out in the chat. We have a pretty good group here though. All right, I think we can get started again. Back to sharing my screen. Hopefully my controls won't lock up again. All right. In the chat, really quick, if you have any trouble getting up your ArcGIS online, please let us know right now, or you can just follow along. And I'll get back to Chris about CalNat. Yeah, email me. We can chat about that. All right. Good. Everyone can see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Very good. So what I'm gonna have you do right now, if you already started putting some map notes on your map, like for you to go up to the top right hand side of your screen, click new map and create new map. You'll need, for this to work, you'll need to be in the map option. So I'm going to go back to my home. Some of you might not have done that part of the exercise. Just fine. We'll need to be in the map tab here with nothing on the map to start with. What we're going to be doing today is adding a variety of different types of data to your map, mostly all vector data. The reason for that is that vector data tends to go onto ArcGIS Online more easily than say raster layers. It's we can host raster layers and be able to include them on maps, but that typically requires a server, and we're in a little bit of a workflow. So just to have the exercise kind of be more representative of what all of you might be using it for in the future, that we're going to mostly be working with vector data here. Something to note is that we're going to be using fire data specifically related to the Caldor fire today, but most of the techniques, the representation techniques, the style techniques, the way of accessing attribute data and filtering it, the whole gambit of steps that we'll be doing in this are applicable to other types of interests. For example, agriculture. I should throw a shout out to AIFS, the Artificial Intelligence Institute for Food Services, that is a sponsor of many of our workshops, this included, and the techniques that we are working with here translate again to food systems and agriculture, just with a different style of display. To start off with, we're going to add some data. And to do so, go up to the Add button at the top left-hand side of your screen and click. And then we're going to go to search for layers. You can see there's a number of options there, and we'll be revisiting most of those in the next hour or so. When it pops up, the first thing you'll usually see is your My Content. But especially if you're a new user, you won't have any content yet. So I'm going to click the down arrow and go down to ArcGIS Online. I already did this before, but I'm doing it a little bit slower here with getting some county data. So I'm going to click in the search for layers and type in counties. The first option that shows up should be USA Counties layer provided by Esri, the parent company of ArcGIS Online. And if you can skim through the information here and then go down to the bottom and click Add to Map. If for whatever reason it pops up and it isn't what you want, there's always the option of easily just removing it from your map here. And then I'm going to close this down here. Next, I'm going to do another search. So I'll go back to counties, erase that, referring to the exercise. By the way, sometimes if you have your exercise open, then it's easier to copy and paste from the exercise and put it into the search function, just to get there a little bit easier without nuances of case sensitive or whatever, or underscores, because sometimes some of the data is a little bit I don't know, it's kind of finicky. The next thing that we'll load in here is this Caldor 2021 DINS public view data set, which is an inspection database of damages, building or structure damages associated with the fire in the actual fire area right on its edges. This is provided by the CAL FIRE, but also I've seen it online through the NRCS, Natural Resources Conservancy Service. And I'm going to add this to the map. You can see that it zoomed me directly to the location of the features. We're going to explore some of these features in a moment. You can see this is point data on top of a very large polygon layer that we're looking at now. The next layer that we're going to add in comes from the Natural Resource Conservation Service, NRCS, is going to be a burn severity map. So you can see that this is already open on the left-hand side under the search function of ArcGIS Online. So we'll click on that as well. And then add to map. So just to back up, what I did is I used the Caldor fire for my search option under add data in ArcGIS Online to have these come available. Now I can close this out, reframe it on my screen, and use your roller button to scroll around a little bit on your map. Look what happened when I scrolled out. I mentioned this earlier. This happens almost every time I load data in, it seems like, is that the map extent for visualization is limited. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back using the back arrow. Anytime you're not sure, you see something on the side pane that isn't what you want, you can use the back arrow or the back triangles to get to where you want to go. If it goes away, then it should pop up, and we can use the detail option to restore it. What I'm going to do is go to my content. So in this, there should be about, and then I'll go to the content option, and you can see that the layer that I just added in is grayed out. The reason for that is if I click on these three little arrows, the set visibility range is too restrictive. So I can click that, go over it, and use this slider to adjust the visibility range. The grayed portion of it is what you can see, and what you can't see is on the white side. The triangle, the little dark triangle at the top is your current map view. So if I scroll out a little bit, you'll see that triangle move over and then move in. So this is where you'll adjust your visibility range. I'm going to set it so I can see it at all ranges. Good. Another thing that you'll notice right away is that one layer just covers up the other layer. Conventionally, GIS folks tend to put smaller features on top and the most important features among those on the highest level in the contents pane. I call this the contents pane over on the left side. And the drawing order of these layers depends on how high they are in the contents. So if it's lower, it's beneath the other layer on the map. So I'm going to click and drag this, and then you'll see the building structures appear on the map. Before we start looking at the data a little bit more, I'm going to load some more data. Going to the exercise, we'll scroll down, and we're going to add some data, some more ArcGIS on line data. We just added that. I already talked about some of these functions before when I loaded in the county data in the previous pane. You can refer to the exercise definitions for what you can see, the table, the style change, and so forth. More info only. Next, we're going to add, I'm going to return to that, by the way, just for the efficiency of workflow. Next, I'm going to add in data from Living Atlas. So in Living Atlas, adding data. And this time, I'm going to go add data, search or browse the Living Atlas. And this time, I'm going to write in fire risk. Go to Living Atlas and then fire risk. The top one that's available should suffice is a risk to communities and potential fire from the U.S. Forest Service. All of these are very similar. They just have different symbologies that are attached to them. I can click on this and add it to my map. You might notice down below there's use as base map. You don't want to do that because that's going to not allow you to move it up and down within your ArcGIS Online contents. So I'll say add to map, and it might take a moment for it to draw because it's a fairly large data set. Hopefully it draws. If it doesn't draw, it might have something to do with the visibility range. Oh, it's also below my counties layer. So if I turn off counties, then you can see the burn severity or the risk level. If I want to see the risk levels, the potential risk to structures level, what you can do is click the legend option on the far left-hand side. I'm going to turn this off for now because this is just going to be something that you'll be able to play with later when you're doing your own stylization, your computer cartography, your online cartography portion of the exercise at the end. Next, I am going to add in the USA current wildfires layer. So I'm going to go back to my add data, Living Atlas. Fire risk should be the first one that pops up, but if I scroll down, USA current wildfires is down below. And I can click on this. And then select add to map. I'm pausing here every so often because I want to make sure everyone has time to take the steps if they feel so inclined. You can see the description in here of what has been this is a description of the data set that notes is that over the past, this data set reflects the past 7 days. And this is provided by Esri. I'm going to close this out. So now we're starting to get a map that actually looks a little bit, I don't know, starting to look a little cool or a little bit interesting. Something that, and this is kind of just stepping back and food for thought. When you're working with fire data, and this goes for a lot of different types of research, you have data that is for future projections, so kind of a pre-fire sort of analysis is capable or possible with these data sets. Sometimes we'll use this in almost near real time for creating during, say, a fire event. One of the maps that Maggie showed earlier was for the Caldor fire. The reason why I got particularly interested in that is the day that this large center section was burning, I was right here at one of these houses that is right next to the fire burn, actually 550 feet from it. And it burned part of my property in 2 different fire spots. So I got really interested really fast and started looking for fire data because nothing I could find was quite real enough time to satisfy me, even though there are some excellent resources out there, including from Esri. But there's, I got really interested in it, and I created a web map. I shared it, and in the first 3 weeks, we had 90,000 views of it. So, first 3 weeks. So, but I digress.
But it's a good digression. I mean, digression, that was sort of the impetus for building this workshop to do, something similar. I mean, it was so, you were able to do it so quickly and it was so powerful. So that's, kind of what we're hoping here. Do you want to do a check-in and just see where everybody's at?
Yeah, let's do that. How about you want to throw in the chat, everyone, if the pace is good, if you want a little slower, a little faster, if anyone's having any trouble.
Are you guys, is your screen looking like Sean's? Pace is perfect. Great. Love it.
Awesome.
Good. Great.
Good.
Okay.
All right. Awesome. Yeah. So again, this is so this to me mattered when it was like actively burning. But speaking with some of our UCANR, we have, for those of you that aren't a part of our organization, we have natural resource and farm advisors throughout all 57 counties of California. And I spoke to a number of them during and then after about how rich of a data set this was, using real-time data to later be able to analyze events like this. And the neat thing, kind of Maggie alluded to, is that this was a very agile process to be able to come up with this data in very short order, in like a few hours, to create a map that was useful for thousands and thousands of people, but also in the process, developed a really rich data set that we could use for exercises like this, training workshops, but potentially future research. So now that we've added in the USA current wildfires, we can see this. We'll return to how to filter and symbolize some of this data, other data, because if I zoom out, what we'll see is a whole bunch of data, and it makes it difficult to know what's important on your map. For now, we're just going to stay zoomed in on this particular area. And we'll at the end of the exercise, or not the end, but closer to the end of the exercise, we'll work on how to create this in like a more to whatever your preference is for scaling. Scaling, I refer to like at different perspectives. Back to the exercise. Oh, one other thing, you don't need to bring this up right now, but it is really neat. I used it on some of my maps and was well received, was air quality. This might not pertain to these wildfires, but if I type in air quality in my Living Atlas options and click enter, One of the first ones up is the Air Now, the air quality monitoring site data. If I click this and add it to the data, add it to the map, I can close out and then zoom out a little bit. You'll see monitoring sites throughout the state. So, you know, when you look online and it says our air quality index is with a fire time like 200 or 49 is not so bad, not perfect, but not bad. This is near real time. This is updated. Actually, it's updated about once an hour. And when the fire was going on, speaking of when an active event was happening, this number got up to 1,200 right here, and then 900 in Tahoe. So that's of concern. I'm going to close that now. You can use that for your reference for doing your maps later.
We have a question from Julio.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So he says, in this example, does the map automatically upload with more recent data, or do you have to do it yourself?
Oh, that you do have, it does automatically update. It updates with its with whatever the real time or the near real time data is. Like I said, it updates about once an hour. One of the next steps that will be, or one of the later steps in the exercise, I'll show you how to capture the data in this moment. So if you need to do sort of time series stuff, then you can. But there's but this is being hosted by someone else out of your control. So it's not you don't deal with updating it. It's updated automatically. The same thing could go for satellite data, which I didn't add in here, but it would be something worth noting. In fact, I could do that right now because it might be interesting. The reason I didn't is because most of the fires are burned out. So the satellite burn data does not look that interesting right now, I don't believe. But to do so, I would go on search for layers, ArcGIS Online, fire, click in that. And then actually, I'm going to type in VIIRS. There we go. This is a fairly live updated data set that shows hotspots that are automatically detected. Once this data is added in, it would show up on your map. You don't need to do this right now. But if I zoomed out, and like I said, there's not much showing right now because everything is cooled down enough. But this would display on your map like a bunch of little hotspots that's automatically updated about twice a day. I'm going to remove that because we don't need it. Carrying on. Tabular data. This is something that's this is very commonly used in ArcGIS Online, as you'll have a tabular data set that you want to add into your map. Sometimes it's just for display purposes, sometimes it's for analysis purposes, but the spatial analysis and relative position to other features of interest. And to do that in your exercise, hopefully I didn't even think of this in the PDF, hopefully the hot link should work. But I'd click on this ANR locations option. And when it comes up in Google Drive, you'll see this download option at the top right-hand side, and I'm going to click that. Just to double check, did that hot link or that hyperlink work through the PDF? Someone wants to throw that in the chat? Yes, okay, I thought it would, but every time I resave it, I'm not always sure. So now this is I've downloaded the ANR locations. I'm going to click this and look, it comes up in Excel. Well, all I need is a unique ID. If you don't have one, it'll automatically create it. The location, so a description of where what is where, and then the address. So these are all addresses of our cooperative extension offices throughout the state, plus our research and extension centers, all listed in here with their address. ArcGIS Online has the ability to automatically recognize address and put pins on the map for where all of these locations are at. If you didn't have, if you had latitude and longitude instead, the same thing would automatically happen. It would put map pins on the map when you load this in. To do this, now I'm going to close out my Excel. I don't need this anymore. Something's hidden underneath. Oh, there it is. Back to, oops, there it is. There's the exercise. To add this into the map, what I'll do is go up to add data. Like I said before, I'm going to show you how to load data from a variety of different sources. This is being one, or different types of data. I'm going to go to add layer from file. So add layer from file, and you'll see this pop-up window. Before I carry on, this gives a description of the different types of data that you can load in. I'm going to have you load in 2 different types today, maybe at least one. One's going to be optional, but you can load in all of these different types. The one that's sometimes confusing is shape files, because you have to zip all of the associated files all into one zipped folder. And the shape files specifically, if they're in some like obscure projections, and I could think of state plane would be one example, that doesn't always go on your map nicely. Ideally, these are in latitude and longitude, and specifically a Web Mercator type projection, but most common projections will go in, but they have to all be zipped up. From here, I'm going to go choose file. So all of you, so you add data from file and then click choose file. If you've downloaded that ANR locations CSV file, it needs to be a CSV. Click this and then click open. As you see, it says CSV or text. Excel sheets don't count. And then I'll say import layer. It'll give me a prompt, and it virtually always recognizes it as long as the format of the Excel sheet or the table is correct. It'll recognize field name is the location of the fields. FID is not needed. Location not used. Address, and that's places, and address or place. And I'm going to click add layer. So we now have points all over our map. We're going to return to how to symbolize these later, so we're not going to worry about the symbology right now or the style. Those are 2 different terms for the same thing, style or symbology. And so I'm just click done, just because that layer has been added, and it zooms out to the level of that. Again, it gets a little bit convoluted with the different fire layers, so we can use our roller ball to get back in. One of them has shown up on the map over here. This happens to be the El Dorado Sierra, or El Dorado Amador office. And that'll be pertinent for some of the analysis we'll do in a little bit. So here we got the most of the data that we need now loaded onto the map. And we're going to take a break before too long, because I know that this will start feeling like driving in the fog if you go back and forth between page and or window to window nonstop. One thing I might note though, and this is really neat, is that if you're an active Google Drive user like most of us are, you can use Google Sheets using this tutorial here. Since not everyone does this, we're not going to do it today, but there's information on how to pull in your data from a Google Sheet. And the neat thing about that is that it can be automatically updated every time you make a tweak to your Google Sheet. All right, now we're going to get into basic transformations and analysis. But instead of having, say, a 10-hour or 10-minute, not 10-hour, 10-minute break at the end of the hour, let's take a quick 5-minute break right now, and we will then jump into this. And if you have any questions, throw them into the chat if you would. I need to grab a sip of water here. What the heck? Shane, do you see this this question from Eve?
I do. I'm wondering if Eve has a public ArcGIS online account that she's trying to use, or if it's a UCANR account.
Hmm.
I
Okay.
have an account that I've used before from Berkeley because I used to be a student there.
Okay. Okay.
And I don't know why it's not allowing me the privilege to import the file.
Okay. Let me look at something on my end and see. You're using Berkeley though, right?
Yes.
Okay. Let me see what's going on my end, and I'll report right back.
It's the Berkeley site license though, so that might complicate things.
Yeah, I just want to test to see if it's the
Okay.
file or what it might be.
Okay.
I'm gonna zoom down to the bottom of the exercise right here and find the link.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess that Berkeley locks you down on using credits for stuff like geocoding.
That's what I'm wondering as well.
Gosh, yeah.
Eve, when you signed up for it, did you go through the Berkeley GIF or the Berkeley, like, were you a student at Cal?
Yeah, I was a student. And so I created this account.
In what department?
I was a global studies major, so it was not in my department, but I did research for the Human Rights Center.
Yeah, so yeah, I think this is going to be a Berkeley site licensing thing, because even the way Eric sets up the site license from the GIF is different from the site license from Berkeley broadly. So I bet you that's what it is.
Yeah, and I think if I recall correctly, I actually had issues importing a similar file containing locations, and I had to contact my administrator.
Yeah, this is all GIS in the cloud. It's all like, on your desktop, if you get your hands on some data, you're good to go. But here it's all about these permissions and licensing. It's just a little bit more complicated. But Shane is going to come back with a workaround. I guarantee it.
And I have one too, because
Okay.
I
Go for it.
predicted something like this could happen. Unfortunately, my Zoom is jammed again. So I'm going to have to, I can't get to my stuff. So I'm going to have to use my task manager to get out of here again and pop back in and then share that with you. So strange.
That's not what I needed.
Right, I'm back, and in the directions on page like 21, I'm going to copy and paste it directly into the chat, just in case someone else has this problem too. Oops, it isn't that pretty when it pops in there. All right, so that is a direct copy and paste. The sorry, there's no breaks between it like there is in the directions with 1, 2, 3, 4, but on, oh shoot, that's not that one. That didn't go to everybody. That just went to one person. One moment. There we go. Those are some directions to bring up the web map that I created while I was setting up the workshop. That way, then you could can skip the processing steps, but you'll have the data there so you can follow along. You might need to turn off some of the layers that have already been processed that we haven't got to, but at least you won't, you can follow along more easily. We can get going again in a second. All right, great. Let's get back to where we were at before. There we go. Got it. All right, everyone ready? Moving on. So yeah, again, we're starting to get a fairly decent map going on here, but there's a lot of data. More, and this is common. You'll have more data in your map than you need in a lot of cases, and then keeping it straightened out, organized, visualized the way you want is a bit of a challenge. And one of the challenges too is when you conduct your analysis, speaking of credits that will or might not allow you to do certain steps, if you try to do an analysis with a ton of vectors, then it's going to take a lot of time, not just credits. And so to get around that, what we can do is filter them. So we're going to work with the DINs, the public view data, and I'm going to grab that and drag it up to the very top just so it's easy to recognize. So we have all of the data, but what is that data? The first thing that we'll do is look at the table. So we'll go down to the little icon, the table icon, and click on this. You'll see down at the bottom of your screen something kind of resembling a spreadsheet like you'd see in Excel that shows the damage is the attribute characteristic and the structural type, and then some other information such as photos. If we clicked on one of those, that photo could pop up. This is very similar to what you might see in a collection app like Field Maps or Collector, or even Survey 123. So this is stored on the Amazon cloud that ArcGIS or Esri uses. But returning to the idea of the table, is this will give you information of how to filter your data. So we have a couple things going on here. We have damage level and then the structural type. And there's 4,444 features. The features are each one of these levels. If I click on one of these on the map, you should see, if I scroll right, you'll see a little cyan square go around anything that's clicked. And so this is one way to recognize your features. If you were trying to find out more about the status of some point, I could zoom in on it and just click it, and it will be the one selected feature. Actually, there's four because they're so close together. And I should find one that's individual. I'll let the map render, and it's slowing down. Come on, there we go. So I'm just going to click on this one this time, and it'll be the one selected feature. I can look at that feature by going over to the options on the far right side of my table and just show the selected record. So it'll show that there's no damage in a single family residence at this single family multi-story residence at this point. And then you can see all of this information here. This information, we're not going to get into this because it's quite time consuming, but that information can be adjusted in the pop-ups. So there's the remove pop-ups or configure pop-ups. If I click configure pop-ups, it would adjust that table that we see when we click on it. If you're doing and this sometimes is a point of confusion, when you create a web mapping application that relies on a web map, you have to come back to the web map itself to adjust this. Even still, sometimes it catches me where it's like, oh man, I got to go back to the web map. But all of this is conducted here, not in the later stages of your app development.
Yeah, the web map is the base from
Yep.
everything. Yeah, it's a good point.
And so we're working on kind of nested levels of foundation. So we have the points and the lines, the polygons, the features all consolidated, organizes in the web map that then is used for all these other purposes, for apps and for whether a field map or for a web mapping application. Again, we're not going to get into this. The way you do that, though, is you go into configure pop-ups, and then you could change names and tweak things all in there. It's fairly intuitive, but yeah, it's time consuming, so we're not going to do it right now. So I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to make sure that nothing is selected, so there's nothing going on. The thing with the selection, and this is important, one of the reasons why I bring it up, is you can select features by manually on your screen here, or you can select them in your attributes table. But if I have something selected and I do any form of analysis, only the selected features are analyzed. You don't, or if you've already set a filter, only the filtered, the remaining data points or features are analyzed when in the next steps. So what I will do here, I've got this as cleared. I'm going to go over to the drop down and clear selection. So make sure there's nothing selected right now. And I'll X out of my table. Again, whenever you're not sure what you're looking at the tabular data is useful, particularly if we want to filter. And that's what we'll do right now by clicking the little filter funnel icon underneath the Caldor DINS public view data. I'm going to go down and there's just so many. 4,444 is just too many to work with right now. So I'm going to pick just about the most limited level, and that would be the damage is minor. So we're going to say affected 1 to 9%, so barely impacted. And I will add another expression. And I'm going to say, so that's clicking at the top. I'm going to click structure type is a single family residence. If I do the drop down, you'll see single story. We're just going to go with that just to limit it for the purposes of the exercise. And then I'm going to apply filter, click apply filter. And now you'll see a very limited set of data. If I look in the attribute table now, you see that there's only 10 features that are shown. This is now a manageable amount of data for analysis or for any other step. So I mentioned, so I touched on earlier, and I kind of alluded that I'd get back to it. Now I am, that what do you do if you have a data set that is relatively real time? It's updated and it's not hosted by yourself. Well, the way to add it to your own contents is to conduct some form of analysis on it. And in the directions, we have two different ways of doing that. Actually, 3 different ways now that I think about it. And one is that we could join it with another set, and this is optional in the directions, and we're not going to do that. But sometimes what you can do is go to summarize data, join features, and then I would join this data set with something basic that has full coverage, like the USA counties. We're not going to do this again because it takes about 3 or 4 minutes for it to actually process. I want to show you the workflow. I go down, select, choose spatial relationship that intersects. So it shows that these points intersect with the USA counties. And then I'm going to choose an operation, join 1 to 1, and then I would give it a name. This is listed down here in the optional join layers functionality. Data enrichment is another way of doing something very similar. So in this case, we're essentially enriching these points with the counties that they're associated with if we were joining it with the county's layer. But you don't have to have the layer actively in your map to be able to do a similar process of data enrichment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce this down. I'm going to go to reduce this as well. So under perform analysis, I'm going to click data enrichment, enrich layer. It's already by default, because this is what I selected in the window. It's also at the top of my page. It's the Caldor DINS public view. And then I'm going to select variables. So what to enrich it with. There's all kinds of different features that might be of interest to you here. There's the health characteristics of the income levels. This very rich database that comes both from Esri and from the Living Atlas has a multitude of things that might be of interest. But right now, we're just going to go with landscape. There's infrastructural landscape and land cover landscape. I can just click land cover for now. And remember, part of the reason that I do this, other than I might be interested in the percentage of forest cover around the points, is that I want to create my own hosted layer right now. So I'm going to go over and click on percent forest cover, and then click apply. Go down to the bottom, and we'll see that we have, by default, it says enrich Caldor DINS public view. That's fine. It's going to define the area to enrich with a linear distance from the point. The larger this linear distance is, it's going to take more computation to figure out, well, what's the amount of area, the distance of area, what's the number of, or the percentage of forest cover within 1 mile. So we want to limit that a little bit, so it doesn't have to really compute too much. So give it 100 yards or something like that. It'll reduce the amount of processing time, even though we're only using 10 points right now.
Hey, Sean, can I stop you for a moment?
Yes.
Maria just had she had to refresh her browser, and this is a good reminder. Everybody save your map now.
Oh, yes, yes.
Because if something interrupts you and you haven't saved it, you're back to square one, unfortunately, Maria. But yeah, everybody, Sean, show them how to do that.
Yes, very, very good. In fact, that's a really good thing to do before you ever run an analysis. This is a side thing, because sometimes it'll freeze up when you run an analysis.
We forgot to say that. So apologies, Maria.
Yes.
But this, with all things GIS, the more you do it, the better you get at it. So you're going to just do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And the better you get at saving often.
Yes, yes. Yeah, once you've lost all of your data for hours of work, you really, really appreciate this. So yeah, so to do so, you go up to the top, click save, save as. You'll enter a map title. I'm going to just give it some new, so AGOL workshop. Practice, I don't know, whatever you want to name it. Something that's intuitive. Add in tags. Workshop. Fire, whatever. Something that's going to make it so it's easily discoverable later on. And then if you have folders already set up, I'm going to go down to my ArcGIS training and throw it in there. And then save map. Really, really good point. I'm glad that that was brought up. I usually remember suggested it the breaks, but yeah, that's critical. Especially once again, right before you run an analysis. So for now, if you've saved your data, before I continue, I'm going to go over to share just really quick, just to show you what this looks like. I mentioned before it wouldn't save until you share it. But if you want to share it, this is where you can set it to share it to everyone, just to your organization, members of a group. And you can create very small groups with just only a single person in them as well, a single other person. We're not going to do that yet. All right, returning to the analysis steps. So we've added in the Caldor DINS public view to enrich. We're using a percent forest cover within 100 yards. I believe that the NLCD data set relies on Landsat imagery, so they're about 30 meter pixels that are used for the classification of forest. And we will go down to the bottom. So I mentioned before that I would return to how to see what credits would, like a process and analysis would reflect in your credits. If you click show credits, it'll show how many credits this will require to do this process. And in this case, it's just 0.1. Very, very few credits. You can see how 100 credits could last you a long time, let alone thousands, unless you're doing millions of analysis points. And I'm going to click run analysis. Oops. I forgot. I already did this. So I'm going to have to give these a different name because I've already done this exercise in preparation. So I'm just going to put a number at the end of mine. And then I'm going to run analysis. This might take a couple minutes, maybe. I timed it earlier as about 2 minutes. What you'll see at the top then is this little circle that's running, and as it chugs along processing. I mentioned before, when it comes to the option of using the notebooks, that you're limited to the processing power allotted to your account online, and it's okay, but it's not really super fast considering we're just processing a few points. Some things process a lot faster than others. Some don't so much. Just give this a second and I'm going to flip over to the other page. Talked about attribute tables. We talked about filtering. I showed you how to do join, which is a very similar step to this. And then the next analytical technique will be we'll do that right at the break. So it'll show the how to do proximity to a location. So say we were, and this could be from 2 different directions. There's, let's see, that took, almost exactly 2 minutes. So I have now an enriched Caldor DINS. And I know some of you might take a little bit longer, more or less, but it should be coming up pretty soon. This layer, then you can go down and click save layer, and it's saved and it is in your content now. You are hosting this layer on your own now. This is the way to get around there's a workaround from online only temporary data that you can then get a snapshot of. You sometimes might want to change the name of that to a date if that data set might be changing over time and you want to be able to record that. But yeah, that's the process for having it in your own set of contents. Next, proximity. This is another neat analytical thing that I mentioned before. It can be going from 2 different directions. One, it can be related to, say, the houses that are not burned or were just slightly impacted. They might want to reach out to UCANR for a fire management plan. This has been a question that's come up with a couple times in the last, since I did the fire map. What does UCANR, what does USCNR do? Some of that is helping the public with their planning for events like fire events. Also, we have CalFresh and FNets, various organizations that have food services where ANR has facilitated provisions to people that were in need. And that would include people that were here. So they might want to have a map to be able to find their local ANR facility. In reverse, I said it could go both ways. The people that are at that particular facility might want to know who to reach out to and where to find them on in their location if they had a list of people that were their potential potential clientele of sorts. So to do this analysis, this direction analysis or proximity analysis, what we do is we go back up to the analysis function, go down to use proximity, and click find nearest. We can now use either the enriched Caldor data set, which I'm going to, you can leave this here. I'm just going to switch out, just stay right here. I'm going to show you what we have now. If I go to the attribute table of this enriched data set, what you'll see is some of the same stuff, the affected area, single family, and then some other buffer information. And at the end, you'll see the forest cover that surrounds those particular locations. There's a highly pretty dense area. I think 467 buildings burned or houses burned in Grizzly Flats alone. This is pretty bad. But this, but they're all in this dense forested area. So you see what attributes are included with this. So now, but it has only 9 features though, because those are only the 9 features that were. So if I go back here, you can see only, I mean, excuse me, 10 features, not the 4,400, because I did the analysis after I conducted the filter, if that's important, if you recall. But going back to the analysis, I'm going to click the analysis tab here. I can use this one or the one below. I'm going to go to use proximity, just like most of you probably are still right here. We're going to click find nearest. I can either use the enriched data set or I can use the public viewing one, either one, since the filter is still applied. This one's hosted in my content, so I'm just going to stick with that. The features that it's located closest to, I'm going to go to the UCANR locations, go to driving distance. You can also do driving time. It's going to be relatively close to the same. It'll prioritize that. I'm going to go driving distance for now. Limit one location within 100 miles. Nothing's going to be even more than 50 miles. So, but I'll leave it at 100. It won't matter. And then we can rename this. I forget what I suggested here. Nearest facility to threatened structures. The naming convention of this is not critical, only that it helps with the directions when we refer to it later again. And I'm gonna have to put another number at the end of this because I've used that before. And you can say include route layers. You may or may not want to click that. I will. And you could also check credits, but I know that it's also 0.9. And then I'll run analysis. This will take about 2 to 3 minutes, a little bit longer because it will determine all of the roads what the most efficient way to drive from each of these locations to the local ANR facility. This is particularly useful if you're using this within a tour map. So there's different types of story maps that are templated web mapping applications. Tour map being one of them, is that you can have these linear features that will show if you're at this location, here is the way to get to the next location. Then you'll see this chugging along at the top of your table, your contents pane, and that might take a couple minutes. So I think this is a good time to take a 5-minute break and return in at 3:08. Sound good? And if you have any questions, throw them in the chat. And I'm going to step away just for a second and then return. Oh, good. My Zoom is still working this time around. You're right back. All right. I see a couple people are having an issue with the processing, which is completely fine. I am going to throw in the chat a quick workaround for that.
What do you think it's caused by, Sean?
I do not know. I'm not sure.
I had to guess. Are you like zoomed in on your map to where you don't have any features in the view, and then you have the limit the analysis to the view extent checked? That's the only thing I could think of.
That makes a ton of sense.
That does make sense.
So what that refers to is when you do your analysis, which I already running analysis, so it's gonna hiccup. But in your analysis, there's a bottom on the bottom left-hand side, very corner, there's limit to your current view. If you are zoomed in and you can't see the feature of the office, the UCANR office, then it won't draw lines to it. And mine is taking very unusually long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a way to search for that data set after it's already been processed. It might already be in the directions. Let me double check. I'm going to copy that. I should still be sharing screen. Good. I'm going to save my data set here. I'm going to save it. So when I move out of here, I'm going to go home. And then to contents. Search for the output. Here it is. See, this is this is the one that I created, must have just finished. And here's the route layers. Here we go. I'm going to share this layer with everybody if it already hasn't been. Oh, good. It's already shared. All right. I'm going to return to my map. Take a second for it to refresh and get caught up. All right. So what I did is I threw in the chat the keyword to search for to add the layer in that should process eventually. I interrupted mine by moving out of the map and saving. So this is really no good right here. I'm going to remove it. It might have something to do with all of us are trying to do the same process at the same time with a similar data set, and ArcGIS Online is not appreciating that. And so what you can do instead is go up to add data. This would be the processing result of what you just did. Search for layers. So add data, search for layers. Not in my content, but go to ArcGIS Online. Paste the name, so the nearest ANR facility to threatened structure that's in the directions, and click enter. And that should be the first thing that pops up on the top because I've shared that with everyone. Click and add to map. And then you should have the processed results of what that would look like if there was enough time for it to process. Does that work for everybody? I'll give you all a second. So to add that data set in there. A lot of this is to learn the workflows. It's not necessarily that we need to have this layer in here, but it's one of the more simple processing steps that I could include in the exercise that wouldn't take forever. Another Another step that takes a ton of time is a watershed delineation analysis. That can be an issue too if you use that analysis step for your for location or analysis patterns. And interpolation sometimes takes quite a bit of time too. So I'll give you just another second to be able to get that layer in there if you want to have it. Now I'm going to move on down. Okay, that was the proximity steps. Oh no, my Zoom just glitched again. Everybody hear me fine?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm gonna have to jump out of it. I just saw my button.
I wonder is there an update that maybe you're behind on for Zoom?
I just updated
You
a
did
week
it?
ago.
Okay, I'm sure you did. Yeah.
I just 1 week ago, I know I updated, so I don't know what's going
Yeah.
on. Weird. Oh well, maybe there is a new update, but it's fine. We can easily get around that. So the I just won't be able to use the chat. So moving onward, so changing the appearance of your map. So we're going to get into some of the more fun stuff. I wanted to make sure that we had enough time to really start. Oh wait, before we do that, one last thing that is kind of neat because it'll add a lot of like data possibilities when it comes to at least fire data. As I included this in here, it took me forever to find this link to the wildfire.gov FTP database. And just so you know, they host publicly an enormous amount of data. So here's just the fires for this most recent couple years, or at least the last year, one of which the Caldor fire. You have the complex, the river complex fire on here. So it goes back at least 3 years. The Dixie fire is somewhere to be found if you go up enough levels. But if I go into the Caldor fire, you can there will be GIS data available and IR. IR is aerial imagery features. In GIS, we have the incident data, and by date, there's an enormous number of perimeter data sets. So I mentioned before, when it's actively happening, this gets updated sometimes, well, at least daily when the fire is active by CAL FIRE and contractors, as well as partnering governmental groups. But like the USGS or USDA rather, this data gets filtered or like organized and then added in here. And what's nice about this is I could go in and just click on one of these and it automatically downloads it. I'm going to look at this in my downloads, show in folder. I already downloaded it once. Let me create a new folder here so it makes sense to you more. If I go inside here and I unzip this, this is a shape file. I said I'd show you how to add different types of data sets. You can see with a shape file, Maggie touched on different file formats. This is one, and this has eight different associated files that are connected. So there's database, which is your tabular data. There's the shape itself. There's a projection. All of this information is included in there, but it's already zipped up into this one perimeter file. If I want to add that, and so feel free to use that link that's in the exercise here to go to this variety, this laundry list of different dates of perimeter data. Download one of these. I just used one of the first ones, the 818. Click it, download it, and then let's load this onto our map by clicking add. Actually not search for layers, add layer from file. Just like we did before with the CSV file. So add layer from file, click choose file. and then go to my downloads. And this is the one that I just downloaded. It's already zipped up. Yes.
Hey, Sean, we can't see the dialogue that popped up. We still see the map underneath.
Okay, you don't see any of the dialogues, huh?
No.
Okay, must be the Zoom thing. 1 second, I'm going to have to pop out just for a second and I'll be right back. This is strange why this is happening. All right, that took longer than usual to pop back up. Oh, now there's 2 of me.
No, it's so weird.
What is going on? We've been using Zoom for like every day for the last year, and then suddenly today it's doing crazy stuff.
Yeah, it was like there was Sean and there was Sean too.
We are back to the original Sean now.
Okay, now there's just one of
Now
me,
you're
one and
back.
only. All right, now I can share again. So bizarre. Oh well. Hopefully it's not too much of an interruption for everybody. And let's see, where was I at?
And
All right. I don't want that.
we could see that. We can see that menu item right there.
Okay, you can see this. So import
Yes.
layer. All right. I'm going to close this a little bit. I'm going to go up to add data. Hopefully it works now. From file, choose file. Can you see that now?
Perfectly.
Okay. Zoom. So good, but so no, perplexing sometimes. Okay, perimeter. I'm just going to select that perimeter file that hopefully everyone saw the workflow to getting that onto your computer. And I'm going to open and then click import. It's going to take a second to prompt it to have a drawing style. And the next step, and I kind of intentionally put this step right here in the exercise because it's a great segue into the next thing that we're going to be doing is style. And what we'll do here is go in and click on the unique types. You can do single type. There's only one feature, so it doesn't really matter which of these 2 you select. But I'm just going to click the first one for now. And then you'll see what's kind of resembling a legend a little bit on the left side of your screen. You'll see transparency options. How transparent is the visibility range? Pretty important too. You'll want to adjust that so you can see the visibility at all different ranges. And I just drug over something and made it funny on my map. Hopefully that goes away in a minute. And then I'm going to click on change symbol. So you see this little gray dot. I'll click that. And this is going to be a layer on top of the other layer. So I'm probably going to want to see through it. And one way to do that is go down to your transparency under fill. So again, if I click on this here, the square symbol pops up to fill. I'm going to shift the transparency to 100% so it's completely clear. And then click on outline. And then for outline, I am going to click some color of my choosing. So it's going to be a dark outline with very little to no transparency. And then when I click OK, you can see the perimeter of the burn on that day. If you are going to or wanted to do this for multiple days at a time, you could go in and add each one of those separately, or alternatively, you could download download these and merge them together and sort them out in your ArcGIS Pro. So then you could really create a neat nested sort of progression of fire by date and labeled in the appropriate ways. That's quite a time-consuming process. We're not doing it right now. But
Don, can we get a check-in on what page we're at on the worksheet, please?
absolutely. Good point. We are, let's see, which one am I? Oops, other side. Too many tabs open. Here we go. We are on page 20 of 27. So right at the bottom, right above changing appearance of your ArcGIS Online map. So that was the segue to go from the moving from importing data. You've seen several different types of data imported in there. And now we're going to start symbolizing stuff, making it neat. Again, here's the directions I pasted in the chat earlier. In case for any reason you lost your work or you weren't able to do the analysis, all of the analysis steps have been done up to this point. So you can refer to this, or if you want to go through the exercise on your own later on, sometimes it's nice to see where you're going with your data. And this will give everyone the option to bring this up if they want to revisit the exercise and don't want to have to go through all the steps. They just want to explore these functions a little bit more in detail. So now to speak to the map, kind of cartographic principles or concepts, I guess. I don't know if they're principles so much, but when you create a map, the idea is to make it as intuitive as possible and to emphasize the things that you really want to emphasize more than other features. For example, you might want to emphasize the houses that haven't been burned down randomly within this really, really intense fire. And to do that, I'm going to OK out of this until I'm done. What I might need to do is put my DINS public view features up on top. So I click and drag that up to the top. And you can see how now they pop out and they're more prevalent. You might want to change the names of the features as well, or adjust your zoom level. Just as a side note, it's kind of a hassle. Sometimes ArcGIS Online is it just jerks from one zoom level to another. You just have to kind of get used to it sometimes. The names of these features are going to be represented on your, if you use the URL, say if you share this and you take this URL right here and put it in an iframe later on, or if you publish it as a map application, then the names will carry over. So you might want to change the names right here to something more intuitive. So the example of that would be the one that we just added in, the perimeter. We could go down, click on the drop down and go to rename, and could say the Caldor fire as of 2021. I know it's the day. I'm not going to rearrange stuff for timing, but, and then we have a more intuitive label. If you want people, when they look at the map and they see the features, if they click on it, they you want them to know have them know what they're looking at. So the Caldor data perimeter, and it has the information that's included in the attribute table. The same can be done for the DINS. You could say this is not, it's not just, DINS doesn't tell anyone in the public what that is. You could say, you could rename it to Caldor fire surviving houses or something. I think. And click OK. And so then it shows that what it's been limited to is what's visible here. Even though I think I just did that not on the enriched one, but on the original, which still has the other data included within it. but regardless, so you can set the name. So when your map is published, shared, then it actually has proper names associated with it. You can turn on and off features that you might or might not want on here. One thing that, speaking of symbolization or symbology, the features themselves, the A&R building doesn't really stand out so much, and maybe you want it to stand out. So what we'll do is we'll go down to the A&R locations, drag that up since it's a point up near the top somewhere, and go to Symbol, Change Style. ArcGIS used to always call everything style symbology, and so that's why I keep on saying symbology. All right, now that I'm in here, I want to change the type of symbol. And so there's multiple types. There's all, if I looked at the attribute table, you'd see all the recs and all the different offices. This time I'm going to just click on options, and you'll see a number of these various features, including other for all the extension centers and the offices, the cooperative extension offices I mentioned. And I want to change that symbol. So what I do, and I'll back up one more time just because I know I might have done that too quick. I'm going to go to the A&R offices, click Change Style. I'm going to click Options, the first options. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and next to Other, I'm going to click change the little gray dot to change its style into something more interesting. And you're not limited to just these this gray point and other features similar in color. But I can go to Shape, click the drop down, and you have a whole variety of options, including what we won't do here is custom images. You can save your own custom icons to really make your map unique. But for now, let's just go with general infrastructure, and it'll give you a variety of different infrastructure icons. And I'm just going to click one that vaguely looks like a house. I can click this one, it looks like a house or a building. And then change the symbol size to something a lot bigger, like 30. I just know 30 because that's what I did earlier and it looked better. And when I click OK, now you can see that the pathway from somewhere that apparently is somewhat important, like a cooperative extension office, you do the same for any of the research centers. It's meaningful instead of just going to a dot. And if someone clicked on that on the map, it would say the location is the UCC Central Sierra location. You could configure the pop-up to also have other information in there, like phone numbers and so forth, or contact people. Now that I've done that change, it's important that I click OK and then done to come out of that. Next, we're going to let's change the background a little bit. And one way to do that is to switch up to the base map. The typical topographic map is useful in a lot of cases. It's not always what you want, especially if you're trying to zoom in to see a house or a feature you're really familiar with an area, and you want to look at aerial imagery, generally collected by Digital Globe in really high resolution. And to do that, we go up to Base Map and click Hybrid Imagery. Now you're really starting to see something that's kind of like maybe more appealing. But it's not, we still need to emphasize different features a little bit more. One way you can do that is that you can tweak the symbology of, say, the burn intensity map below. And I briefly mentioned it earlier, but this is a neat way to go about doing changes to your symbology without worrying that you're going to change something that's going to make it worse than what it was before. Is I'm going to go down to the Caldor Final Burn Severity for Team. That's the layer that we're looking at there. And I'm going to click the drop down, or the three little dots. So this is near the bottom. We downloaded it kind of early on. And I'm going to click copy. it'll take just a second, well, not too long, but it'll pop up now at the very top of the screen once it finally gets loaded up. And it'll become a lot more vivid because it won't be buried below the California, the partially transparent USA current wildfire incidents and perimeters, the map. And that's taken a lot longer than it did last time to do it, but it will pop up and load. So while it's loading, one thing that I might mention is that if you publish a map and it has too many features in it, eventually it'll break. If you have a ton of features, I ran into that recently where I had like 3 weeks of perimeter and daily fire progression data included on there. It broke the map, and I don't know why this is taking so long to load right now. So strange. Anyways, but yeah, so if you add too many layers on there, it will break it. While it's doing that, I'm going to return to the directions. So we are moving down. We're changing the symbology. We are the ANR locations. We just did that. Change the base map. We spoke earlier about, or I talked about earlier, about how to change the visibility range, and I'm going to revisit that as soon as that pops back up. Or doesn't. Holy moly. It's just the fact, it did load. Oh, says the visibility range, the little chugging thing's gone. I mentioned earlier, you know how if it doesn't show up on your map, one of the reasons is usually the visibility range. And look, I'm zoomed just far enough out that it isn't showing up. If I move it over, then it should appear on my map in a much more vivid color. You can rearrange, once you get the colors in there, you can rearrange them, but you can also change the style of these colors. I actually kind of like these colors, but if you wanted to, you could go into the symbology or the style and choose the attribute to show. SBS, I'm going to cancel back and back up to show you what that is. I'm going to go into the attribute table. SBS is the burn severity classification that was already selected by CAL FIRE. You can see what the percent burn and other information over here is. But the SBS seems to be a good feature or characteristic to rather a good attribute to display. To change that style, I go into the style. SBS is the attribute that I'm showing. And then I can go into unique styles. And if I wanted to, I could change some of these. So it makes sense. Like it's intuitive. High damage, you want it to be red. Low damage, blue is pretty good. Moderate is yellow. Unburned is green, but that's within the fire boundary. So there's very little unburned, and then other. We won't do it right now, but you could change any of these symbols. And then click OK. And done. I'm going to turn off that top layer for now. So I want to go on to something else that's important. And that is, I mentioned earlier, is when you scale out, if you scale out, you see you get all this other stuff that doesn't really make sense to have on there. Like if you scroll out far enough, you might not want to have on these linear features. So what you do is you scroll out to where it no longer becomes relevant. So anything beyond, say, this zoom level, those road features do not matter anymore. So what I would do is go down and find the connecting lines. So there's the nearest ANR facility threat structures connecting lines. Pick the drop down, select visibility range, and then move the visibility range down just past that so they disappear. And then you get rid of all these extraneous features that you don't need on there. You can do that with any number of the other ones too, but we don't necessarily need to do that. The other way of getting rid of stuff that you don't need is to come back to that good old handy filtering step. So you see all of these different features out here, these fire features that are kind of distracting. I remember you want to emphasize the things that are most important, and maybe you don't want to emphasize the ironclad fire. So what I would do is go down to USA Current Wildfires Incidences, click the filter, and you need to go down and find there's probably the incident name. That would be it. So these are all in alphabetical order. So the incident name is, you could type in Caldor, or you can click unique and do the drop down to find what you're looking for, also in alphabetical order, and go find Caldor and click, and then apply filter. Now only that one pops up on your map. You've limited your features. We could do the same thing with the ANR offices if we wanted, but we will skip that because I want to make sure that we can publish a web mapping application before we finish up and still have a fairly nice looking map. So now everyone, let's just save this again. Make sure we save our data, our map, and let's create a web mapping application or a web app. This can be done a bunch of different ways. I'm not going to dive into the map viewer, which is one of my new preferred ways of doing of working through this workflow, and the experience builder. But let's go with the conventional, I would say old school, because this stuff is not that old yet, but the traditional way of going about it, and that is that I'm going to go to share. I'm going to share this map with everyone. I'm going to delete it later anyways. There's nothing, there's no ethical issues with sharing this data. It's all public access available. That is something to keep in mind though. You want to make sure that you don't share things that are unethical. One example would be, I remember there was someone at UC Davis doing a domestic violence location map. They had a real hard time getting around how to display it on their map or on their map service. So we're going to display this though to everybody. Here's the link to the map. I mentioned earlier that you could copy and paste this into an iframe and it would show. I can't do that right now because that portion of ANR site's still down, but that's okay. Right now, I will click done. I could click done and then pop back in here. But the other thing I'll do is I'll create a web app from this. And here, the web apps are templates essentially. Now, if you're a regular desktop user, ArcGIS desktop user that is, then you might be familiar with the idea of a layout view versus a map view. The layout view is where you include like your north arrows, your legends, all those kinds of things. Well, that's similar here. The web app is going to display a number of things. They can be displayed as a story map. You can have it as a collection app that's specifically designed to integrate with, say, field maps, and any number of other standardized templates. I'm going to click show all, and just for now, because there's for time's sake, we'll just go with a basic viewer. That said, if you're down in the exercise publishing, I do have some references for creating web apps and resources that might help direct you on what you might want to do. But I'm going to go to a basic viewer for right now. You can preview what it looks like, but I'm just going to say create web app. This is the same thing I did with the Caldor Fire, same process I did for the Caldor Fire map. That that got the 90,000 hits. I can add in summary, all of that stuff, but for right now, I'm just going to throw this in my training folder so I can track it down easier. Or not, I have too many folders. Forget about it. And I'll just say done. And what you will see is this web mapping application pop up. That's what it'll be titled in your contents if you were to look at your contents later on. That has a fairly intuitive process of tweaking things. One of those is you can change the name. So you see this AGOL workshop practice. That has to be changed actually in your web map. Some things you can change here, some things you can't. But you can change the theme. You can set the color, so it has this color that I like here. That you can turn on options for what you want to be able to include, including like a legend of what's being presented on the map. You can have show pop-up panels instead of a pop-up window, so that would pop up your content to the side. But you can, this is one of these things that you can explore, and I'll leave that up to you, because this could be this is something that we'll return to and focus on in much more depth when we do the story map workshop next week. But you can use all of these different tweaks here to change that. One thing that's important, again, there's a couple things that are going to carry over from your web map that this is based on. One of those is the title. So I'd have to change the title in the original web map to have it change here. The other thing is the standard zoom level. So whatever zoom level it is in the web map is what it's going to come up here as. So after I check or don't check any of these steps down below, I'll save this. So I'll check, make sure there's nothing important that I might want to adjust. It's like web map theme is good. Options are good. Search, you can search for the features, and I'll click save. And once it's saved, then I can click launch. And here's what the map looks like. And I'm not quite done yet. We're getting there, but you can see that the map, it more or less is what you're hoping to look for. If you zoom out, you'll see certain things that you don't want to see on there, some things that you do. The way that you need to adjust that is you need to go back to your map. I mentioned that some features have to be adjusted in your actually in your web map. So I will back up early on. So I'm back to my web map now that was originally shared. And I am going to change the name here, just so it maybe looks, you don't need to have underscores. GIS people tend to add underscores a lot of the time. You can change any number of other things, the features, the layers, the background, you name it, the zoom level. One of which I might do is I'm going to filter the USA perimeter. So you see which one is this? The Dixie Fire. I forget which one this is over here. But I'm going to go and limit that to just the perimeters, to only the name again. There's the incident name is Caldor. Apply filter. So all the rest of them are gone. I might not want to have in the nearest lines just for now. I decide I like that zoom level. I'll save it. And then we'll pop back to the actual web map, and this is what I was getting at here. If I refresh this, then those changes will be included there. So then you have the map more of the way that you want it, except for this hasn't changed. It might not have had time to refresh all the way. But at least the Dixie Fires is gone. So any questions out of curiosity? Let's look at the questions. Oh, by the way, once this is done, you can copy and paste this into an iframe of a site, which would be the next thing that I would show. Let me look at the chat. See, assuming I can even get to my chat. I can this time. Cool. Any questions or thoughts, suggestions, or comments? How was that as in terms of like coverage, what you were looking for? What else might you all be interested in seeing on some of these follow-up or subsequent workshops that we'll be doing? I know there's a lot of information here, and I want to make sure that I don't fire hose you with too much, but get you what you need. Okay, good session. Good.
So Sean, are you wrapping it up, or are you going to show some more stuff?
I am wrapping it up a little bit. I want to make sure that everyone gets, I know it's everyone's Friday. We have, I want to have time for questions and suggestions here. And I also want to suggest that everyone look at the, or please fill out the evaluation form.
I'm about to send that out to everybody, but I wanted to make sure you didn't want to go back into,
actually, I could explore some more of these options actually, now that we do have time. I just want to make sure I know that when everyone gets, oh, go ahead.
I would just say, I would love to hear if anybody got to this stage and has made a web app that's, that has its own URL that you could send to somebody.
Yeah, and you know what? Good point. I just realized that the tone of what I just said sounded like I was coming to an end, and I'm not done necessarily. I just want to make sure that we have time for interactive questions and to explore some other things right now for the next like 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's really just 12 minutes.
Yeah.
So before we all part for the afternoon, I am going to put in the chat the evaluation link. I will tell you guys, we just really pay attention to these. We use these. So if you have a moment, if you can fill this out, we'll also send you the link via email, but we really do take it seriously. So if you can, be much appreciated. And it would help if I could copy and paste. Sorry, you guys. Andy sent it to me, and I am trying to grab it.
You have the, okay, yeah. We will send it out and pester you a little bit on the email list for the workshop.
Yeah, so there you go. There it is.
These are very important to us. Yeah, so anyhow, let's, I don't see any more questions coming in. Oh, go ahead.
Hello, hi, Sean. Yeah, so first of all, thank you very much for the wonderful presentation and the tutorials. It was really amazing. And then I was able to follow up to the end. Yeah. So, but I have got a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so because basically I'm planning to build a tool that would basically present some maps to the users, but these maps will be updated daily. So user can basically see he can basically from the drop down he can select a date and then see what maps on that day particularly look like. Mm-hmm. So these maps will be built on a local server. So how can I really incorporate those in this kind of service?
So let me get this straight. So you're going to be building the maps in separately. They're not going. Are they going to be dynamic with data that's going to be updating, or are you going to have? Okay, got it.
So there are some modules that I have written. Those can generate the geotapes or the raster maps. So they get updated daily. But
So
You know what? This sounds like a great office hours question.
Yes.
It's probably
Yeah.
more in depth than we can do right now. But Vivek, I'm going to
Yeah.
put the link. It's a long link, but we have this office hours. You can just go on the website, sign up for office hours. You can get some dedicated time, answer some of these questions.
Mhm.
I think that would be ideal.
I agree with that because there's a lot of potential options, and an office hours would be a good use of that.
Yeah, that's a terrible long link. Hold on. This
So
is better. Sorry.
Yes.
My cut and pasting technique is Friday afternoon challenged.
Yes, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure we had this bit of time here at the end to answer questions and to point people to the office hours, because we're here to help. We love this stuff, and we love helping everyone to the best of our ability. One thing that actually is a great segue into a little bit of teaser material that I was going to show related to templates that I preloaded just so I could show everyone. The one way to address some of these, like where you have multiple complex maps that you all want to include in one place, is to include them in a story map. So you could add these. So this is essentially like a whole bunch of those basic maps, but instead with tabs across the top with conditions. This is related to fire potential maps that are shown. So you can have these more complex templates. We just did the basic here, and this is something we'll be looking at next week. How to do these more complex maps, and the data beneath these maps, the underlying foundation of the data can be dynamic where it changes all the time. Some of it might be static that you host yourself. It's kind of a depends question that you asked.
So Sean and Shane, are we planning to put all of these workshop videos on our YouTube channel? Is that part of our plan?
Yes, we can do that.
Because Diane would like to know if she can access some of the previous stuff. And yeah, we have a YouTube channel with all of our drone trainings, but we should put these trainings on there too.
That's a great point, because I typically organize them and then save them and then send the link out the following week after the workshop to everybody.
Yeah.
But there's no reason why I can't save it to our YouTube channel. And we have, by the way, tons of great content on our YouTube channel.
I'll put that link in the chat as well.
Also on our always improving website, assuming that ANR sites are working, we also have a bunch of tech notes that they're handy for various mapping, drone, you name it, type purposes. For another whet your appetite, here is another cascading select form of story map, which is something that we often do, included in our story map workshops. You can see that this has advanced a long ways, and some of these might be coming from the scene ability function of ArcGIS Online, but also from Map Viewer and Experience Builder. And you can incorporate these different types of imagery. One of the things when it comes to building maps, it's not, once you get over the kind of technical hurdles of figuring out how you want to create your like represent your data, the next step often is what kind of text or other visual accompanying stuff goes along with it. And that, by the way, is much more time consuming than the actual building the map part once you get the hang of it. Sorry about the barking dog there.
Your dog's like, Daddy, it's done. It's 4 o'clock.
I know.
Feed me.
And I can't even yell at him because he's deaf. I don't know why he barks. But anyhow, so this is an example. Another one I mentioned earlier was the tour map related to, this is something else that we've done for our research and extension centers. an easy template where you can skip from one location to another with visual infographics and associated with an underlying map. All neat things and all things that you can look forward to. We also, again, we had coming up following these more online related workshops, we'll have ArcGIS Pro workshop coming up either the end of this month or the beginning of next month, as well as field maps. For that, you might want to look at our IGIS webpage. Do I have it up here anymore? Oh, here we do. Yeah, so our calendar, if you're not familiar with it, on our IGIS page, we have our calendar of upcoming trainings. And this year we've really boosted up our training. So we have a whole bunch more stuff. Maggie mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, and I just put it in the chat. So please do come back. We love repeat. We love to build a community.
Yes.
We got, I think we got 3 minutes. I think we can start to wrap it up.
Yes. Very good.
So thanks so much, everybody, for all of your attention and hard work. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Again, thanks for filling out the evaluations in advance, and definitely look forward to seeing all of you at the next virtual workshops. Eventually, we will do in-person workshops again too. It's I know with COVID and everything, we get isolated, and there's a little less back and forth with questions and answers. And I think moving into the future, we'll have a lot of hybrid or both virtual and in-person workshops.
Yeah, agreed.
Great. All right.
Agreed, Sean.
Thanks to the team too for helping everyone out.
Much best regards, y'all. Take care.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks a lot, Maggie and Sean. Appreciate it. Look forward
Chris.
forward to working with you a little bit more too, Sean. I'll check in with you on CalNat and see what's available.
Yeah. Greg Ira, he uses a lot of our. He's the head of CalNat Naturalist, and he's loves the ArcGIS and story maps too.
Super.
He's involved with all this stuff.
Maggie, who knows? Maybe I'll learn this stuff.
You will. I know it. I have faith.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care, Chris.